Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast, the official podcast of Pineland, broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep inside Pineland, where we discuss faith, family, finances, firearms, freedom, food, and everything else in between, with those who believe in living free and living out the values that made this country free. All right, welcome everyone to the Pinelander Podcast. My name is Paul LaFavor. I'm here with my Ranger buddy Mike Blackburn. Today is Friday, the 19th of August, 2022. And once again, we're back in the undisclosed location. Today, we wanted to talk about leadership, particularly aspects of leadership that are important, and maybe some things that we can avoid as leaders. And I think leadership is always, no matter where I go, Mike, talking to law enforcement, Army, Marines, even the civilian sector, the topic of leadership always comes up. It's an important topic in the family, in society. And so I think an hour of our time talking about that's probably going to be time well spent.
Yeah, they were, I think people are starting to realize more and more how important leadership is. And I think those of us that have spent time in the military, I think we take leadership for granted. It's just pounded into us from the time we join until the time we retire. And then, it's really becomes an integral part of our life and how we do things. And we're constantly working on it. I'm still working on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been out, now almost 20 years. I've been out quite a while. Wow. And I'm still trying. Yeah,
I didn't know it'd been that long.
Yeah, I retired in 2004. So, it's 22, so you can do the math. But I'm still working on leadership. I'm still working on how I influence others. And, maybe not even just my family, maybe my children, friends, coworkers. But I think it's an ongoing exercise. I don't think you just get a class, you take basic leadership, BLC, bullet, whatever you want to call it, PLDC, primary leadership development course. I don't know what they call it now, but they probably got a gazillion names over time. But you don't take a class or a school, a leadership school, and then you're done.
Yeah,
it's something that, even though there's a lot of definitions for it, it's a huge subject. So I kind of like where you're going today, which is really kind of talking about some of the pitfalls and things to avoid that we've all witnessed. I don't care who you are, where you've been, where you've worked. You've witnessed bad leadership. We all get some of that. But I think it's equally important to talk about what bad leadership looks like, as it is always talk about what we try to strive to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, and perhaps it's good also just to start off with a definition of leadership. Socrates once said, wisdom is the beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. I think that's true. Fear of the Lord is also the beginning of wisdom, but leadership is, as the Army's ADP, Army Doctrinal Publication 622, says that leadership is the process of influencing others, providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the mission and to better the organization. And so, what I really love about that definition, definitions are so much fun, aren't they? I mean, it's important to define our terms. Words mean something. And so the first thing you think of is, leadership is influencing others, as you said. And I mean, just the short answer is you never arrive. So we can't just you took a course, okay, you're good, you arrived. That doesn't work that way. And so this is the beginning of, learning how to be a leader, learning how to be effective, learning how to influence others. And also, I like this, how we provide purpose, direction, and motivation. It's very Aristotelian. What I mean by that, if you don't know, guys out there, is Aristotle wrote a book, The Art of Rhetoric, right? In the art of rhetoric, and rhetoric is just being skillful in your speech. But he outlined 3 drivers of persuasion that we could go off on a long tangent, but it's ethos, logos, pathos. It just means the ethical argument, the logical argument, and the emotionally attuned argument. And so just the idea of bringing that up is to show that influence is more than we may think it is. It has an ethical background where you look like a leader, you dress the part, you look professional, and then it's logical. You know what you're talking about. You know the doctrine. You're using the correct lingo. And then you are emotionally intelligent and switched on, so you know how your words are received. So just a quick, shot off the bow, across the bow. So we look at those 3 drivers: persuasion, and then the idea is leadership. The purpose is to accomplish the mission and to better the organization. And so, having said that, I think some leaders that I've run into, they kind of blow it on the influence, right? They may get their words correct, but they usually are not emotionally intelligent, right? They come across wrong and they don't even understand. They're just emotionally defunct. They don't know that people don't understand what they're saying, or they're just coming off so crotchety, right? That people just can't fit. Their words don't fit the situation. They don't think about are people listening or not. They don't look at their choice of words, their tone. None of those things are considered. And then let alone, of course, how are they connecting? Are they connecting with those who are people actually following them? Do they look back to see is somebody following them in the file?
Yeah, I think connecting is like a key thing you said there, because I've listened to quite a few very intelligent orators, good with the words, slick, saying all the right things, but you get a feel for them, whether they're, are they of one mind with the audience? And if they're not connecting, if you don't really feel like this person is, if they're just talking and not really, you can tell if someone means what they're saying. And if they're motivated by the same things you're motivated by, if you don't have that kind of connection, then you're just listening to a skilled orator. I mean, you're not listening to someone who's really moving the crowd, a leader within the crowd. You're just listening to a guy that's polished.
Yeah.
And I think that connection has got a lot. I didn't really realize that until much later, I think, in my life, does this guy really care? I mean, or is he just intelligent and, really good in front of a crowd,
Yeah, it goes beyond being able to, talk well. So I've known a lot of guys that talk very well, but they don't have, like I was saying, they don't look back in a file to see if anybody's following them. Leaders have followers.
And I've had leaders that, I'll straight up honest with you, weren't that intelligent.
Yeah.
And I've had leaders that I'd follow to hell that were not very well educated, were not, schooled, didn't have a, 4-year degree or whatever. But man, I tell you what, when they talked to you, you knew they meant what they were saying. They were willing to throw themselves on the pit, so to speak. They were going to die on the hill that they were fighting, and you knew that about them. Yeah. And sometimes that's sort of contagious. But I think that has a lot to do with the pathos, right? I mean, but they were able to connect in other ways, emotionally. But you knew it's like, hey, I'm following this joker. I mean, I agree everything he's saying, even though it's not, it's
Absolutely.
not real polished. It's not a lot of big words, but this guy was real.
Yeah. So just kind of segueing from that last thing you said, not being polished, but having that emotional investment, with their followers. And then the other thing is knowing that they're responsible, right? That idea as a leader is, that's that old adage that we have, A squad leader, right, is responsible for everything the squad does or fails to do. Now, you can just fill in that, title: team leader, squad leader, platoon sergeant, team sergeant, detachment commander, whatever. You're responsible for whatever that team or detachment or whatever platoon does or fails to do. And so maybe at this point we can get into the acronym BLEMISH. So I have identified 7 pitfalls of leadership. And I think, are there more? Of course there are more. And I've identified these 7 because I've witnessed them firsthand.
Right.
I've been in a really good unit. Just kind of paint the picture here. You worked hard to get to where you're at. You love your job, but you hate your boss. And it's because of one of these reasons. And so you may not quit your job, but you're tempted to quit your job because your boss. And that's the problem. And by thinking in these ways, we could avoid these pitfalls and be better leaders. I mean, that's really the long and short of this.
Yeah, I think at least while I was in the military, you're always talking about, like you said, the things you need to be, right? To be a good leader, all the positive attributes and character traits that you're supposed to be working on. But I don't think anyone will sit there and say, hey, these are things that you want to avoid. So I think this would be very useful.
Yeah.
I wish I had gotten this when I was, young E5, buck sergeant starting out.
That's really, that was the impetus behind writing Tactical Leadership. So our listeners, this book, Tactical Leadership, actually this is chapter 1. We're just kind of expounding upon a portion in the book, but I think this has resonated with a lot of people. We want to do a podcast on it and just talk a little bit more, kind of an expansion of the book, if you will. But so blemish, here's the 7 pitfalls of leadership. The first one is blame shift. So we talked about responsibility. Well, a blame shift pitfall is a toxic leader that really just blames others to cover up their mistakes. And so this could be the guilty can remain nameless, but we did have a commander in an SF group that they came up short on some items, and he conveniently used the fall guy for those items. And it turned out to be disastrous, the fallout of that. But that's probably one example. Someone else who's not responsible for those items that by virtue of being rear debt, something like that, ends up eating that. It's just one example.
And I know it's a coincidence because, blemish is a cool word. And you needed, the first one to be blame shift.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's an accident either that's number 1.
Yeah.
I think this is the one that you see in a lot of people.
Yeah.
It just seems like this is like a lot of people's first go-to character deficiency.
Yeah.
If no matter what it is, they've always got a reason or an excuse why, they didn't perform or do something right.
Right. It's I think it would be at the ground floor. This is indicative of an integrity issue.
Right.
Someone has their moral compass isn't pointing the right way. It's off. It's got declension. Their default setting is to just protect their own butt, and they would conveniently use somebody else.
Right.
Because this is also the person that sees their team, detachment, platoon as a stepping stool to go to the next whatever. Right. They want to be a 10-star general or whatever. I'm picking on officers here. There could be,
I've seen plenty of
E14.
Right, an E14. Right.
And that doesn't exist, of course. But the idea is they won't stop at anything. Right. Their hypocrisy and their integrity violations know no bounds, and they will find someone to fall instead of them because really they fail. I think they fail to take responsibility.
Yeah,
that's really what it is. And then somebody with this type of tendency, this is a serious character flaw. Going to just speaking from as a former and active instructor out at the Q course, when we had somebody go through SUT and we saw this, somebody that didn't want to, they just, anything they did wrong, they had a convenient excuse. It was like they could quick draw this excuse pistol and they could
They
skin
were
it.
always ready.
They always
it's
had something.
Yeah, and that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
And of course, we sit around and wonder, didn't anybody else see this for the last 6 to 8 months? Because when you start seeing it out there where we see it, I mean, that's really troublesome. But
and you've got, you take your food away a little bit, you take some sleep away, and then some of these issues come out.
that's true.
And so this is, but the idea with, I think the overcoming this is just remembering, if you have a tendency, look, all of us, I think at the core, we want to be lazy. Okay. The bad part of us, our sin nature, is to look somewhere else and go, it doesn't come natural. Because kids do this, little kids, they go, somebody else did it.
No, and what, of course, what we're always taught is, and I think you said it correctly a little while ago, and that is responsible for everything your unit does or fails to do. So, the opposite of this, which is really what you have to work at, is even though you may not be directly responsible, if you are in that position and you are responsible for everything that your subordinates are doing underneath you, then you have to take responsibility for it. You have to own it. And then you got to get in there to your team and try to figure out what went wrong and fix it so it doesn't happen again. Yeah. But you see less and less of that today where people are like, got it, my mistake, let me fix it. Yeah. You don't see that. That's a rare quality, but when you see it in people, it's certainly refreshing.
Yeah, and I think the way this is supposed to be done is you build trust with your subordinates, and you have to be able to trust them, and trust is a two-way street. And then so you give them that leeway to do X, Y, Z. Look, NCOs, for the officers listening, NCOs gravitate to soft because they want to be treated like adults. So they don't want to be told what to do and how to do it. And no soldier really wants that either. And so the idea is you have to build trust in a unit. You have to build trust with your subordinates, and then you have to actually trust them. So when it goes bad, then you got to own it. That's the idea. But so that speaks, I think, volumes. But the second one, lackey. So I'm just looking at our time here. Time is always our biggest enemy. But lackey, right? So what is a lackey? That's just kind of an older word. I reached back, a few decades. But this is a people pleaser. This is a bootlicker. This is someone who...
Your yes man.
Yeah, this is your yes man. This person is toxic because they're people-pleasing leaders. They avoid confrontation. They won't stand up for their troops. And it's for the sake of popularity. They don't want to, they want the confidence. They want to gain that. They want to gain respect in the wrong way. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, their focus of their loyalty is directed in the wrong direction. Yeah. Obviously you have a boss. I have a boss right now that I do some part-time work for. And I absolutely love this guy. And the reason why is because he's always telling his boss what he's not going to do. And it's because he understands us, and he understands the team and what the team's capabilities are and aren't. Now, does the boss want to hear that he's not going to do it? No. But, he's not going to set the program up for failure and have us jumping through hoops for something that is not going to get performed at the standard that it ought to be. And so, he's able to tell his boss, no, and this is why. And I really respect that in a leader, and I think all of us do as subordinates, when our leader is able to speak truth to their boss and not sacrifice the subordinates in order to just please their boss and move up the ladder like you were talking about. He understands that we're not here to make him look good. He's in a position to take care of us and to make sure that the program is doing what the program's supposed to be doing. Because that is how he's actually taking care of his boss.
Right on. Yeah. So when I wrote this and when I was thinking through this, I saw this as Lackey as reciprocal to blame shift, right? Yeah. This is the idea is I think that if you put this, you turn this on its head, you really have the 11th principle of leadership, which is to employ your team according to its capabilities.
Exactly.
So if you say, well, you want us to do X, Y, Z, we don't have, it's not like you're finding a way to say no, but your team and you say, I'm not sure if we can do that.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about saying, you're not just trying to find a way to say no, but your team and you're hesitant to say yes. You can even say that that may not be the best use of your team it's the leader this is probably one of the harder ones.
Yeah, but I think
when you got a good leader who's not a butt kiss.
Yeah, I mean you could put this at any level you want. I mean,
you told the story about your mom, your team sergeant.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, he was
this guy.
Don,
what was his name?
Dan Holloway. He was a prime example of that. I mean, the guy had a set of stones, but
you got to have a set of stones, though.
But here's the deal. I mean, even your mom and dad. Okay, you can't tell me that if your mom or dad is always going yes, yes, yes every time you're asking for something, that's a good parent.
Yeah.
So it's really the same concept. I mean, when your parent tells you no, there's a reason for the no. It's because the no needs to be said. I mean, in my opinion, I think yes is a much easier stance than no. No takes some discipline. It takes some courage. It takes some intelligence. Yeah. Because shouldn't just be no, but it also should be no probably followed up with a reason, why. So that it's also a teaching moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So egotistical. Following along in the acronym.
Egomaniacal.
Yeah, egomaniacal, egotistical. So this is a conceited, self-absorbed, self-centered person. Now this one, I think I've seen probably more of these. If I could just throw out like percentages, I would say this is at least half of the toxic leaders I've seen. These guys, let me just kind of paint the picture here. So this is a guy that can take credit for someone else's success, right? He'll ride the wave of success, but is not the guy that would actually, say, hey, you know what? I would like to take credit for this, but it was really, person XYZ that we really need to recognize here.
Or even the guy who is able to see everyone else's contribution to the effort.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's very easy sometimes to know what we are contributing and how hard we are working individually. I think sometimes it takes a little more maturity to kind of look around and go, there's a lot of other dudes around me that are, putting their effort into the pot.
Yeah, you just said the big buzzword, maturity. So, I mean, the opposite of this is a guy that's mature, who knows. So I'll put myself out on the limb here, and you can saw it off. So my first 6 months as a team sergeant, I was kind of this guy. I told people what to do and how to do it, and people, they don't like that. People don't like to work under that. They want to use their brain. They want to use their creativity. And I was just looking at, hey, let's just make things awesome. And I forgot that, hey, people that gravitate to soft, they want to be treated like adults. And so basically I had to have another guy, just say, hey, man, you are screwing up royally. You guys love you, but you're being toxic.
Yeah, one of the problems, of course, that we see often, at least in special forces. I'm not going to talk about other branches of SOF because I'm not familiar, but in our branch, team sergeant might be the first leadership position that a guy sees.
Yeah,
and that's very late in the career. Okay.
Yeah.
Other than very minor leadership roles over others that you might be training or what have you. But I think that's probably normal for anybody that is in their first or second leadership position. Is I think you have a tendency to rely on your own abilities first and foremost, because you trust those. And so I think it's very easy to become a micromanager. God only knows I was when I was a young NCO. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the first leadership style is, barking orders, right?
Right.
And then you start realizing that there's a lot of talent around you, but that takes a little maturity and some experience to start utilizing the tools that are around you and all the talent that's around you.
Absolutely. So I could have learned, there just wasn't any team cert in schools. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, tag, you're it. You made 3 up, 3 down. Here you go. But that's something I had to learn the hard way, is to be a talent scout. Like, okay, and then also I may not have the best answer for every problem. I may not have the best solutions. Somebody else may have that, and that's okay to have enough maturity and say, you know what, I don't have, this other guy came up with the awesome answer, and it's not me, and that's okay. Yeah. And that's, a lot of people aren't willing to do that. Someone else comes up with the awesome answer and they feel slighted, or because they have, mouse balls, pardon my expression, and they're just so inferior. They feel they have an inferiority complex or something like that. And this is their overcompensation, where they have their egomaniacal streak kicking in to be toxic. I guess what I'm saying is, perhaps egotistical leaders really are insecure, and they don't really know who they are, and they're afraid. They're really terrified of being a leader anyway, because if they,
there's a lot of responsibility, and like I said, I think it's typical for new leaders to learn those lessons. Yeah. I don't think there's any other way to learn them except just to do it.
Yeah.
And then in hindsight, you look back and you go, man, what a prick I was,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that happens.
It does.
I think that's completely normal. I think for people that are trying out leadership, just be aware of that.
Yeah.
And try to work through it as quick as you can.
Yeah, so the opposite of egotistical is not be self-centered.
Right.
Know that you are a leader, but you're also a member of this team, and that everybody else is, can have some awesome sauce that can be brought to the table, if you will. Micromanage, right? So this is probably, this has got to be up there, high percentage. If we could just talk about, if you put percentage-wise, I would say micromanagers are those toxic leaders, probably half of all bad leaders, maybe. But
well, that's insecurity too. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with what you were talking about, which is, I think people that micromanage is because they have a really hard time trusting the fact that the way they want this thing to look is not going to get achieved unless they're doing every aspect of it.
Yeah. I think I misspoke earlier too. I probably should have, my little vignette would have felt, into this category a little bit better now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, I think honestly, I'm glad you have them 3 and 4. And again, the word blemish is cool, but it's also kind of working out really nicely, because I think egotistical, maniacal, and micromanager do go hand in hand.
Yeah. And sometimes you have somebody could have, all 3 of these things. They could have, a slew of these issues. But yeah, micromanager, we've all had that guy.
Oh, my God,
any job worth doing is, worth doing well over your subordinate shoulder as you do it for him. Something like that.
Yeah, there's a couple.
That's a joke, by the way. You don't want to do that, but
there's a couple things about micromanaging too that I don't think that leaders realize. I mean, obviously it's bad to be doing it. It's going to wear you out, because there's time that you can be devoted to other tasks that are more in line with what you should be doing. But the other thing too is you're not developing subordinates when you're micromanaging them.
Exactly.
And the other part too is, your subordinates want to be able to take ownership on their tasks. They want to be able to show it at the end and say, "Hey, this is what I did for you, boss." And then you go, "Man, I tell you what, that was awesome." So you're really stealing the show, especially if they're doing all the work and you're kind of coming in there and just thinking that you're the one that's actually doing it. And I think you're taking a lot of the credit away from the folks that are actually, working their butt off for you, trying to put out a good product.
Yeah, this may not fit the best, but what came to my mind here is something that T.E. Lawrence says in his 27 articles. And if you don't know who T. Lawrence was, Thomas Edward Lawrence of Arabia, basically says it's better for the Arabs, and he was an advisor to the Arabs at the time fighting the Ottoman Turks. He says it's better for the Arabs do it tolerably than you do it perfectly.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if you follow
you're not
the logic
developing.
here,
You're not developing them.
And you can't be everywhere. So there's a span of control with leadership that's usually stretching out to like 5, tops
Hate
6.
to say this, but I know myself, some of the best things that I've learned in life have been as a result of failure.
Yeah.
So as a leader, sometimes it's, if you can afford it, it's not a problem for your team to mess up a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of learning that can go that takes place when you mess something up. I'm not telling you to throw the mission, okay? But where your subordinates can make mistakes and learn from those, allow that to happen. And I think that's exactly what T.E. Lawrence was talking about.
That's fantastic. Absolutely. So just kind of recapping here, we did blame shift, we did lackey, egotistical, micromanage, and then, okay, work with me here. I needed an I, but it's inability to keep your word.
Yeah.
So obviously I I just didn't have the thesaurus available that day, but this is somebody just can't keep the word. What I mean by that is they're not honest, right? Yeah. So this is reciprocal of an integrity issue. Maybe they promise you some time off. Maybe they promise that, XYZ is going to happen, then it doesn't pan out.
Right.
And so you can't really trust this guy. Right.
No, it deserves,
they talk a good game.
No, it deserves a standalone section, because we talked already about the fact that blame shifting is kind of can be related to integrity. But yeah, this is important. I mean, you have to be worth your word as a leader. Yeah. And sometimes you got to put out the information that's not popular. But go ahead and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that I learned as a father, I have 2 grown daughters and now I have a granddaughter, is you make few promises. I mean, if you're going to make a promise, you better keep that promise. Yeah. Your word is your bond. So I'm 50. I'm still a young man. But something my father taught me that was taught by his father is your word is your bond. If your word means something, you mean nothing. That's the idea.
It's funny because, I'm going to tell you what comes to mind, okay? Neither one of us are big fans of Disney, okay? I think they groom children, okay? Yeah. And it's funny because you were talking about, I'm taking my daughter and my granddaughter down to Disneyland, Disney World. Yeah. And I was like, dude, I mean, how can you go to Disney now knowing that these guys are, this is an absolutely...
I had to take one for the team.
Crazy freaking corporation that's really gone bad, unfortunately.
That was kind of like my last trip.
Yeah, I know, but you were kind of like, this is what you told me.
Yeah.
You said, well, I made a promise.
Yeah, I did.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I couldn't, you can't argue with that. Yeah. Because when you tell your granddaughter you're going to go do something, go do it. You know what I'm saying? Later on, we got some information that, probably today you probably wouldn't have gone there. You probably would have gone to some other amusement park. But here's the deal. You told your granddaughter she was going to Disney World. Yeah. That's where you went.
Yeah. I think it's, I look back at all the leaders that kept their promises. They said, hey, we get back, we're going to get this time off. We're going to have a 4-day pass, whatever it is. Yeah, you want to go for broke to make that happen. So I think
under promise.
Just be a strict, under promise, over deliver. Absolutely, right. Absolutely. So then self-control. So this is really a toxic, leader. Obviously, is the toxicity is lack of self-control. Obviously, self-control is really important for
an emotionally
a
unhinged
warrior.
guy.
Yeah.
The other thing I think I'm gonna tell you what comes to mind with this too, Paul, is the guy that gets the first bit of information and just he's on fire.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you haven't even gathered all the information yet. So he's already making a fool of himself. He hasn't gathered any information yet. He's heard a little snippet of something.
Yeah.
And this dude's freaking ready to, burn down the house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah, this is we've seen that, a guy throwing chairs, throwing stuff, and letting his anger get the better of him. So I have written here, I'll just read this. A man who would wisely govern others must be able to govern himself. Yeah. And that's the idea is, a leader is, I'm not saying a leader is a manager, but in some sense, a leader is managing some things. You're managing men, you're managing people.
Managing your emotions.
You're managing your emotions too. So, what goes hand in hand with this is we often talk about this emotional intelligence. This is, this, and you recognize it for what it is. And you recognize you're really pissed, but you repurpose the anger. This is a Stoic concept, but you repurpose that negative emotion. And then also, it's okay to be pissed, but you keep it under control. Right. You don't want to become unstable, right, and unhinged, untethered. And I'll just dime myself out for this also. One morning, any of my friends, former teammates out there listening, they were supposed to have, it was a range day. So a lot of things going on with the range. It's early in the morning. We're going to have, go down to get your ammo loaded, get the trucks ready. Anyway, I come in and the stuff's not ready. And so I kind of flip my script and I kick a garbage can, which had some old beer bottles in it. And those things went sailing across the room and they saw it splattering everywhere. And I just felt like a tool. At the moment I thought that would be awesome. I will kick this garbage can. It'd feel really good and make a point. But I really just made myself look like an idiot. And I lost some cool points, which I had to pick up. And I actually picked that stuff up because I don't want to have somebody else pick up my mess. Anyway, it was bad form.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, looking back, I don't think losing my crap was ever worth it. And I'll tell you why. Because I can calmly place a red dot on somebody's eye orbital area, upper thoracic chest, take the slack out of the trigger, and see you later, homeboy. We don't need to be pissed.
Purely out of profession.
Yeah, it's just professional.
It's just professional, man.
I don't need.
It ain't personal.
Now look, I'm a civilian now, but that's the idea. Is right. I don't, if you're pissed off and angry, you're going to shoot crappy anyway. So that's just right. As an example, so. If you're pissed off and angry, are you going to be thinking straight?
Yeah, take a little time if you need it.
Yeah.
Step away from it unless it's time, time sensitive. But generally speaking, most of these instances, you have some time to kind of gather yourself a bit.
Now, I want to talk about this also. It's a known psychological construct. It's really these emotions are judgments. And it's about 6 seconds. They say it's 6 seconds when something happens and you interpret something has pissed you off so much. You've got a circuit in your brain that lasts about 6 seconds. So if you can last like riding a bull, to 8 seconds, okay, then you'll
be a lot clearer.
You're going to be clearer if you can just do something else for 8 seconds. And usually you can do that. Then you're going to go ahead and you're going to short circuit this ingrained reaction, and you can repurpose this toxic anger. Because anger is good. It's okay to be angry, but not sin. That's the idea.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with anger. I guess one thing I've learned too is don't always believe what you see. Don't always believe what you hear.
Yeah, you could be interpreting this.
It could be an interpretation issue.
Yes. And that's really what it is.
Or somebody's straight up just manipulating you.
That's true. Most psychologists, they say that, and I think this is true, is anger, and just look at, I'm just picking on anger here for a second because this goes hand in hand with self-control, is anger is a defense mechanism where you think you've lost ground and you've got endorphins that kick in. Now, sometimes this is good to go. Somebody is attacking your family. You need those endorphins. You need to be as calm as you can, but you need to do what you got to do to be the one-man PSD. Yeah. Now, at other times, the idea is it's a judgment call. So somebody has cut you off in traffic. I'll just use this because if you drive down Scarborough Road, you get pissed. You can't drive anymore in 5 lights, and you want to pit someone off the road. Right now, the thought has come to my mind at times, but that's just the idea because I think, oh, they cut me off. No, they did. They're texting. They don't even know that you're in the lane.
They don't even know you exist.
Exactly. They're in their own little world, man.
Yeah, and then of course the other part is, what do they got going on?
Yeah.
They just find out his wife's cheating on him. They just get fired from a job. I mean, has he figured out he hasn't got enough money to pay for Biden's high fuel prices? I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
So you could be having a bad day.
So self-control is always, the best way to go, as they say. And, if you can't govern yourself, how can you really expect people to follow you? That's the idea. And so I have another quote here from Charles Martin. A leader who cannot control his emotions of anger, excitement, etc., or who is swayed by his impulses of vanity, egotism, ambition, or personal prejudices, cannot obtain the best results from others, nor give his own best service to the cause. So that's the idea. You control your emotions or they control you. Right. That's really it. So, good leaders, they know, they recognize that and they go, hey, I'm really super pissed. And they take those 8 seconds because it takes 6 to get it kind of fully, work through our system. So then hypocrisy. This is kind of, it seems convenient, and I actually worked on this acronym for a while, and then I think I did I was really super happy when I found blemish, but the idea with hypocrisy is, hypocrisy is so lame. I hate it on all levels when you see it. Yeah. Whenever you see hypocrisy, you may not know how to spell hypocrisy, but you can see someone who's hypocritical. It's ugly.
Yeah, and you see it in all aspects of life, in the corporate world, especially, but even in the military, I witnessed lots of hypocrisy. When you get to a certain rank, the rules don't apply to.
Yeah, do as I say, not as I do. The rules are for thee, not for me.
And one of the things, one of the things I really loved about the Ranger Regiment was there was one standard for everybody.
Yeah.
That was from the RCO, the regimental commander, all the way down to the private that just signed into whatever battalion. We all had to do the same ruck march, the same standard, same weight. Everybody's gear looked the same. And that was a big deal. The PT standards, everything. It wasn't like once you got sergeant major, you didn't have to worry about that stuff. Where I saw in plenty of other units, but that was one place. That's one thing I really could say that I really admired about Ranger Regiment was they made a concerted effort to make sure that there was the standards were enforced from the top all the way down.
Yeah, that's solid. So I wanted to bring up one of my heroes, Major Richard J. Meadows, or commonly known as Dick Meadows. This was an American warrior of the first level. He enlisted the Army light about his age and joined at 15. He's from West Virginia. His dates are 1931 and 1995. By the age of 20, he was promoted to Master Sergeant. Saw combat in Korea, and then went to the Q course, 1953. That was brand new. 1952 was in 10th group, 7th group, and 8th group. Right, so he got around. Then I heard about something called MACV-SOG, went over there in 1965, and it was a wild man. So from some of my reading, I found out about him that he actually took some pretty good pictures of the Ho Chi Minh Trail to the point where he took some artillery sights off of some NVA artillery pieces that he had snuck up to and got, and then put them on General Westmoreland's desk. At the time, if you didn't know, guys, the Ho Chi Minh Trail is a major cog for the Viet Cong to infiltrate into the South. The cog is a center of gravity. It's a center of physical and moral strength. The idea that he was doing such a great job, he was battlefield commissioned in 1967. So here you go. You got a guy that's, he's a young master sergeant. He's a young captain. And then he was the commander of the Ranger Corps in 1970. And then there was something called the Sante Raid. You guys have probably heard of that. It was in November 1970. He was handpicked by Bull Simons to be the assault team leader for Blue Boy. And Blue Boy was a 53 that actually purposely crash landed inside the compound at the Sante prison. This is ballsy. Now, if you a little background of the Sante Raid, and I just want to talk to you about how awesome Dick Meadows was, and kind of how he wasn't any of these pitfalls. He didn't fall into any of those. But the Sante Raid, it was called Operation Ivory Coast. It was executed 21st November 1970. What was going on there? They believed intel suggested that there were some POWs. What had happened is they had been moved because of the river that was running near it had been flooded. But they weren't sure if they'd been moved or not, but so they went ahead and executed. They also, I think, had some other reasons. And one of them was that there was a new SAM's missile that was being fielded with the Viet Cong. And they had some advisors out there, Chinese, Russian advisors, and also they're training the Cong up on these new surface-to-air missiles. And I believe by talking to a guy named Lupiak, who is no longer with us, but who was on the Sante Raid, he led me to believe that they also went in primarily to find the POWs, and secondarily to go ahead and take out these instructors of the surface-to-air missiles at the south compound of the Sante prison.
Right. And the reason why that was, these people weren't Vietnamese.
Right.
So it was very politically...
The Chinese and Russian, this is...
you can't target...
Yeah.
We weren't going to sit there and telegraph the fact that we were targeting
Right.
foreign nationals that were doing training
Very
inside
sensitive.
of Vietnam. Very sensitive.
But they shellacked
But they were very aware of them. The U.S.
Yeah.
government was extremely aware of them, and it was a problem.
And the long and short of it is, they executed the mission. Bull Simons landed in Greenleaf. Red Wine was another helicopters. You had Red Wine, Greenleaf, and Blue Boy. Dick Meadows was in Blue Boy. There were no prisoners, but he had the bullhorn that said, "Hey, we're Americans. We're here to get you out." They still cleared it. They still managed to. There were still some cadre there. NVA cadre. This is in the north part of Vietnam, so they waxed those guys. And then at the south compound, in about 5 minutes, Simons and the Greenleaf, those raiders, they killed 100 to 200 of the Russian and Chinese advisors, which sometimes you would hear someone say that it was an NCO club, or not NCO club, but an NCO course or something like that. But what I believe happened, just by reading the other, accounts of it, thank you, brain's not working, is that these guys were advisors.
Yeah.
And as you said, this was a little bit sensitive, and they didn't want to just come out and say, "Hey, yeah, we're going to go in there and wax them," but they did.
So at immediately following this raid, of course, it was the media passed it off as a debacle.
Yeah. But it was
Anybody-
expertly planned.
Anybody
and
that
conducted.
actually studies this raid realizes it was
Textbook.
far from a
Yeah.
debacle.
Textbook.
Actually, an absolute textbook and
Yeah.
a very difficult undertaking.
And I would love to go into it a little further, but it's beyond the scope of this. But
Yeah.
the idea is these guys practiced this so many times. Once Greenleaf and Redwine were able to just follow up and land after they took care of these guys, they landed at the other north compound and just followed suit and cleared the compound. Now, Dick Meadows was on this, and I just want to just kind of recap everywhere we've gone in this episode and just talk about Dick Meadows and why he was a great leader, because he didn't fall into these pitfalls. So one thing that comes to mind if you read Quiet Professional, and this is a great read, and I wish I had read it. I wish I had wrote it. Is he had a great mind for finding new ways of improving old tactics. He had a great mind of just saying, hey, what's a better way to do this? And when somebody had a good idea, he acknowledged it. And he said, that's a great freaking idea. And they would use it. And so he was a guy who could say, hey, look, I don't know everything, and I haven't arrived. Now, so when we first started this episode, we talked about how a good leader never arrives. Right. He's always learning.
Well, yeah, one of the things that I was not accustomed to in the military, when I came over as an E6 from the infantry into SF. So I'm sitting in my team room, and my team sergeant, Dan Holloway, had a big board. And whatever the problem was, whatever the mission was, right, you'd write that down. And all of us felt free to raise our hands and say, hey, what about this? What about that? And you had max participation. All of us were throwing out crazy, bright ideas or maybe stupid ideas, okay? But all of them were written down. Mm. And at the end of that, we were able to kind of look at that and figure out, taking a piece from everybody, really, come up with a plan that the team sergeant would have came up with. But it truly was a collective plan that all of us had some ownership in. And then, of course, when Dan Holloway said, this is what we're doing, then that's what we were doing. Okay, discussion was over. But that was a very I hadn't seen that before. It's usually like, you get told what to do and you go do it. Yeah. But that was kind of like what you were talking about. And that was certainly a quality that Dick Meadows possessed, was being able to really manage the talent around him and really be able to pull in the good ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to work for this guy. I didn't mention this, but after his career, after his retirement, he was actually he was instrumental in setting up the unit. Okay, he helped Charlie Beckwith stand up Delta, and then as I understand it, he was a ground branch guy in Tehran when the unit was doing Desert One, and he barely got out. But the guy had some stones. He was also used, Ross Perot and him did some stuff, and he rescued some guys later on. But he was a knowledgeable guy. He was never pompous, though. So this is a guy who had been around, he'd done it, but he still had an ability to learn from people.
Right.
Even though he was a MACV-SOC, even though he had done this XYZ, he always found a way to learn from somebody.
Always a student.
Yeah, always a student, yep. Also, something I loved about him, and I gleaned from the book, is, he gave and received loyalty. And that's not the guy that's, the blame shifter. The blame shifter guy, the micromanage guy. This is a trust issue. This leader doesn't trust you, doesn't want to, enable you as a subordinate to be a leader, right? I mean, something that we do that the Russians don't do is mission type orders. You might have heard of that before. It's a concept in our Army. We give somebody 5 Ws to execute the mission, and that way we don't have to have generals on the front line getting schwacked. And that's something that Dick Meadows obviously followed is he empowered others. He's always quick to recognize good work and good talent, and is quick to commend it. And so this wasn't the guy that this was. He was not the egomaniac. It wasn't all about him.
Yeah, and another thing too, you got to be able to take criticism.
Yeah,
and I think we appreciate a leader that can do that. If you've done something, if there's something you need to work on, you appreciate it when somebody, number one, cares enough about you to actually bring it to your attention.
Yeah.
And then you need to assess it, and if it's true, take ownership of it and say, yeah, thanks, and be able to make adjustments.
Yeah, be mature enough to say, yeah, that's a valid point, and hey, taken, that's good. Like mediocrity, right? So these days, mediocrity is, I think, the order of the day. I think we can just go ahead and say that the jury is back in, and mediocrity is the order of the day. So just meet the minimum bare standard, good to go. You showed up, you got a pulse. What's your beret size, right? That's kind of where we're at. Well, that was not in his thesaurus, his personal thesaurus. He was not a mediocre guy. He didn't do the bare minimum push-ups and then got up. Okay, good to go, 70%.
Right.
No, the guy did his best all the time. Something that I've learned about him is also the fact that he was like a personal magnet. So the guy just commanded respect. He had presence, but he didn't have to always remind you, "Hey, I'm in charge. Hey, I'm in charge."
Yeah.
Now you've probably been around somebody like that. They always have to go out of their way to tell you that they're in charge. It's like, is this for your benefit or mine?
Right.
Right. It's probably for the former, but he didn't do that. The training he gave. So I love this. Also, it's brought into the book, Quiet Professional. That he and I need to look up the name of the guy who wrote this book. Maybe you can do that for me, Mike, as I'm talking.
Yeah.
But the training he designed was detailed, realistic, and challenging. And so he thought this through. He thought through the training, and then it had a purpose. It wasn't just, it always had a mission-oriented type of goal in the training. So it trains you fight.
Yeah, Schoonmaker.
Right.
Pete Schoonmaker.
Right.
Another exceptional leader, by the way.
He trusted his men, always kept them well informed, right? Here's the idea is,
I'm sorry, Alan Ho is the author.
There you go, Alan Ho. Thank you.
Pete Schoonmaker did the foreword.
There you go. So Alan Ho and then Pete Schoonmaker, the former
Delta
four-star.
Commander. Yeah.
Gotcha. The idea that I think that made Dick Meadows such a great leader is, I think this is the way I say it, is he tethered audacity with prudence. So the guy did some ballsy stuff. I mean, the guy was on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The guy was in Tehran. The guy did crazy stuff, but it was prudent. It was prudent risk. So he didn't risk his subordinates for something just to make himself look good. It was a purpose behind what he did. In the book, highlights a case in point where he actually, in order to get a good photo of some Viet Cong on the Ho Chi Minh Trail who were sitting on the trail, he shimmied up a tree, and it took him hours. And he took a picture from above of these guys, taking a break on their way down south. And then he thought, "Oh man, now I'm stuck in the tree."
Yeah, that's ballsy.
But this is a guy cut from the same cloth as Robert Howard. The same type of guy. Yeah. But with this little bit of time I have left, let me just ask you, as our listener, as you evaluate your own leadership potential, do you have one of these pitfalls? Do you have one of these? If you do, are you man enough to acknowledge it? Are you able to use the ideas of others? Can you accept criticism without taking offense? Are you overly sensitive and rush to defend yourself? How about this? Do you depend upon the praise of others to keep going? Right? Can you anticipate how your words will be received? Do you have emotional intelligence? This is probably that's as worthy of its own treatment. Can you understand how your words are being received? This goes back to what we talked about from Aristotle, the three drivers of persuasion: ethos, pathos, logos. The pathos is, do you have an emotional intelligence to know, hey, I said that wrong. That didn't come out right. Let me restate that. Right? Do I understand that?
Or understand the emotional drivers.
Yes.
What's important to your team?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, hey, this is. I think it's worthy of our time to read about leadership. We should want to be good leaders. I mean, if you're a father, you're to be the leader of that family. If you are if you're a leader, I mean, if you're an SF, let's just say, we'll just take this for an example. If you've made it to the qualification course, you're a leader, and you're expected to lead a company-size element, and so you got to be ready to do that. What is leadership? Leadership is the process of influencing others, providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the mission, and bettering the organization. So bettering the organization is really not falling into one of these pitfalls. A lot of people can execute a mission, but they're toxic, and as soon as the mission's over, people want to jump ship. So the idea is, don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
All right, Paul. Well, anyway, that's a good episode. I think hopefully that our listeners will enjoy it as well. I know I always learn every time we do an episode on stuff like this.
Yeah, me too.
But anyway, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Pinelander podcast. If you enjoy our content, we hope you'll check out our sponsors. Blacksmith Publishing has been serving the warrior class since 2013. We have great titles written by warriors for warriors. So you can go to blacksmithpublishing.com and check out the bookstore. Also, if you're looking for some cool apparel or some stuff that you just can't find anywhere else, head on over to the general store. That's at pinelander1776.com. And got shirts, hats, jackets, sweaters, stickers, patches, and a whole lot more. That's the pinelander1776.com. If you're interested in helping develop our country's next generation of warriors, consider donating to the American Agoge Project. We have had some people pledge some money already to that endeavor. We are serious about it. We think it's well past time to start doing something for our youth and getting them ready for the challenges that they'll face in the future. So until our next meeting, remember to keep your head on a swivel, stay mentally and tactically smart, physically and spiritually strong, and socially astute. And to each other we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. God bless Pineland.